We will now talk about price and how price is the key factor in where supply and demand meet. So again, what is this message? What is the seller trying to say here? Well, again, the seller is trying to get people to buy because low prices signify what consumers would want. So a low price is a sell, and every consumer wants a good bargain. Why does price matter? Well, price is the value that we place on things. In a market economy, price determines who can purchase things. If you don't have the money, you cannot purchase them, or you don't have any means of getting the money. So it is established by the interaction of supply and demand. And again, as we talked about in class, it's where supply and demand will meet in the middle. They'll agree to operate. So here are the signals that price sends. A rise in prices tells producers to increase production, again, making more money. A rise in prices tells consumers to buy fewer goods. They're not getting as good of a bargain. Falling prices would have the opposite effect on both. Again, we can see that they are in direct conflict with each other. If quantity demanded is greater than the quantity supplied, then we have what's called a shortage. For example, a ticket scalper may raise prices outside of a concert or a sporting event in which there are not any other options to purchase tickets, and they'll be able to get a higher price due to the shortage. When demand is greater than supply, rising prices will act as a way of rationing or limiting the demand for the product. So the higher the price of a ticket, the shorter lines will be to purchase it because, see, we start limiting who can actually buy that ticket based on the high price. Clearance signs are a sign of a surplus. When I go to Kohl's and I shop the clearance racks, they were not able to get rid of those items at full price, and so they've decided to put them on a clearance rack. They are a surplus item and they're wanting to move them and get them out of the store. The market wants to eliminate shortages and surpluses. I mean, in a perfect world, quantity supplied would also equal quantity demanded. We don't live in that perfect world, so there's always going to be shortages and surpluses. An equilibrium price is when there is only one price at which, again, the quantity demanded equals the quantity supplied. Here's an example. We did a little bit of this in class last week. Here's our equilibrium price for CDs. Notice that the two producers and consumers have decided that they can meet in the middle at a market price of $15, and at a market price of $15, 600 million CDs would be offered by producers. A market surplus will force prices down, again, trying to get rid of the items. A market shortage, on the other hand, forces prices up. So what we have to remember here is that buyers and sellers have their own best interest in mind. When I go to the store, I go looking for a bargain. When a producer is selling an item, they are looking for the most that they can make from their item. So again, this means that gradually supply will balance out demand. So one of the things that a producer has to do is to somehow establish a price for their item. To attract buyers, then sellers are going to need to lower prices because we know that as prices go down, demand increases. An equilibrium amount, as we said before, is where the two meet in the middle. Now, these illustrations you're going to need to look at and make sure that you understand how we're coming up with these numbers. In the first illustration, you can see that the market price is actually $15, and at that $15, 6 of those would be offered by producers. However, if producers raise the price to $25, then there is only going to be, as far as demand, one person is going to buy that at $25. And producers would like to sell 11 of those. So if you take 11 minus 1, that's where we come up with there's a surplus of 10 items that are not going to be sold at the market. At a price of $10 in illustration B, the reverse happens. So at $10, you can see that on the demand, there are 10 people that would like to buy that item at $10. However, suppliers would only like to offer 3 of them for sale. And again, 10 minus 3 would be a shortage of 7. There would be 7 people that would like to buy that item that are unable to because it won't be offered at the marketplace. And at a price of $20, we have, again, a surplus of 6 because that is above the market price of 15. And at $20, there would only be 3 demanded, and there would be 9 offered by sellers. So again, a difference of 6. And once again, as we alternate surpluses and shortage, we agree again to meet in the middle at the market price of $15. So shifts in equilibrium price. Now we're going to be graphing equilibrium in class as well. Once equilibrium price is reached, the price will only change if there's a change in the demand or the supply of the item. If demand and supply change in the same direction, then equilibrium price will shift the same direction as well. Demand increases, equilibrium price and quantity supplied both increase. Demand decreases, equilibrium price and quantity supplied decrease. And this is just showing a equilibrium price. You can see that the first equilibrium price was $15 and a quantity offered would have been 600 million. The new equilibrium price is at $17 and there are 800 million offered. Now we don't know what caused this change in demand, but it was definitely an increase, could have been consumer tastes and preferences, but something caused the demand curve to shift, and when that happens you're going to have a new equilibrium price established. So allocation we've talked a little bit about in chapter 3, because remember we talked about how each economic system has to decide who are they going to produce items for, how are they going to produce them, and how are they going to distribute, who's going to get those items. So allocation is that decision of what's going to be produced, how much is going to be produced, and who will get those products. And in a market economy, right or wrong, prices are what determine the allocation of limited resources. We have 2 new terms in this chapter that we have not talked about before: price ceilings and price floors. And you're going to need to spend a little bit of time memorizing the definition because they can be confusing. A price ceiling is a maximum price that the government would set for a product or service. Now, prices can go lower than this maximum, but not higher. What is not on this slide that you need to remember, especially if you're taking notes, is that a price ceiling operates below the market price. So a price ceiling is going to operate below the market price. Rent control is an example. So if the government set a rent control of $800 for a 1-bedroom apartment in the city, that 1-bedroom apartment, if there was not a rent control in place, would probably rent for $1,000, maybe $1,200. But in order for more people to have an opportunity to rent that apartment, the government can step in and say, we're going to set a price ceiling here in order and set this maximum price in order that more people can get this product. Now, it can have unintended outcomes because some investors might say, all right, I'm not offering an apartment at $800, so I will not offer my apartment at all until I'm able to charge a higher price. So this is an example of a price ceiling. See that equilibrium price in this example is at 900, and the price ceiling, the price is at 600. So again, when the government comes in and says we will make you charge a product less than what you should, it's always going to be a price lower than the market price. Something that we've talked about, we haven't talked about in class, is rationing. I would think that you have some definition in your mind of rationing. We heard a lot about it in history in World War II. And rationing is just a way to limit purchases. But when this happens, again, we have shortages. And when that happens, then we can have something that's called a black market. And on that black market, this is where goods are bought illegally. Usually, and they're bought and sold above the price ceiling. So in the event that the government again steps in and sets a price ceiling, sometimes that forces people to open a black market, which once again is illegal. Now, a price floor is a minimum price that the government sets for a product or service. Again, prices can be higher than this minimum, but not lower. Minimum wage is our best example of a price floor. It is the lowest legal wage that people are allowed to pay to most workers. And if you think about minimum wage now being at $7.25 an hour, the market would actually operate below that. Because think about you as a high school student. Would you work for $6? Would you work for $6.50? I'm sure that some of you would work for less than minimum wage. And so in order to keep minimum wage at where it's supposed to be, where people can live off of it, a price floor or a minimum wage is set where it's going to operate above the market. And a price support is just some type of government action that increases the price of a product. And usually the government goes about this by buying more of the product. And again, here's an example of a price floor. You can see that the market actually operates at $4. But the price floor, and this, I'm not sure what year this was, but at that time the minimum wage is at $5.15. It's been a few years ago. So notice that the price floor is the lowest price that you can offer, but it's going to operate above the equilibrium price. Again, when buyers and sellers go to the market, there is a lot of communication that takes place. That's where, again, we agree on a certain price and sellers agree to sell us products at a certain price. The government can also influence markets through its actions. They can impose taxes. They can also bring about some type of financial policies that will affect what happens in the marketplace. So, putting it all together, we'll talk about these examples in class, but think about this. How will each one of these following events affect beef prices? So go through and see if you can figure out how will each of those affect beef prices. And again, we will be graphing equilibrium in our next quiz, in our next class, and we will be doing quizzes on My Big Camp.